Hello and welcome to this edition of Consciousness Raising Online. Good to see you, Clyde, as always. Always a pleasure. Um, Today, this session I've been wanting to do for several weeks because the subject I'm going to cover uh, is what I consider to be such a serious and egregious slap at the true story of Black people, and it deals with Hollywood again, as it does many times with me. But I got to do this in three pieces because there's a movie. I guess it's coming out this weekend or the next week or sometime soon. And here's the deal: there's a movie called Green Book, okay, and it alludes to the Green Book, which was also called the Negro Motorist Green Book, and also the Negro Traveler's Green Book, which I'm gonna give you some history about in just a minute, even if because there's some things some people know about it, some don't. But the movie called Green Book, which I also will deal with a little bit too, has nothing to do with the Green Book, the true Green Book, and it slanders a real Black person, and it just pissed me off. So I'm going to probably some of the information I go into will probably be a spoiler for those who have maybe are planning to see the movie. But here's the reality. I think that the information I'm going to share with you about the movie and the true story will allow you to watch the movie with a better eye, with more knowledge. I don't think it would take away from the movie's allure, such it may be, but I do think it's important that we have the true story. Okay. Now, as far as the Green Book or the Negro Motorist Green Book, I'm going to show you a quick video that will give you an idea of what it was about and why it was about.
Americans fell in love with the idea of the road trip in the mid-20th century. A growing middle class meant more people had cars and jobs with paid vacation time. And a newly built interstate highway system meant the country was accessible to a big part of the population for the first time. The open road indicated freedom, and traveling by car reflected Americans' image of themselves: self-sufficient, curious, and spontaneous. It was a way for families to spend time together and see the expansive country they called home, to experience America's cultural and natural diversity. Through the 1950s and 60s, the highway became the most common way for American families to travel. Motels and roadside attractions sprang up along the highway to accommodate travelers needing a place to sleep or eat at any point on their journey. But that freedom didn't extend to all Americans. Black motorists were turned away from the roadside hotels, gas stations, and restaurants that had taken over the American landscape. Some places were so hostile that it was unsafe to even get out of the car. Sundown towns forcibly expelled African Americans at night, sometimes violently. Black families had to take prepared food in case they wouldn't find a restaurant that would serve them, extra gallons of gasoline in case filling stations wouldn't sell to them, and even empty coffee tins in case they couldn't access a bathroom. They carried blankets and pillows, knowing that finding a safe place to sleep could mean camping by the roadside or driving long hours into the night, even though they had money to pay for a hotel. Sometimes that distance was fatal. It was the exact opposite of the spontaneous American road trip.
Thank you, Clyde. I knew there was a thread on here in Destiny somewhere about the traveling Green Book. In fact, I might have put it in there, or maybe you did. It's been some years ago. So that's why I was very much curious as to why all of a sudden it seemed like there was this interest in the Green Book when I saw that Hollywood was making a movie about it, which I'll get to that in a minute. But let's talk a little bit more about the Green Book for those that aren't familiar with it. This is Mr. Green, a graphic of Mr. Green. And as the video alluded to, it had a list of hotels, boarding houses, restaurants, beauty shops, barber shops, and all kinds of services, gas stations, etc. And I vaguely recall my grandfather using the Green Book when I was a little boy. Uh, my grandfather was a Baptist preacher, and he did a lot of traveling around through Kentucky and Tennessee to black churches. And when I would go down there in the summer, and in particular, I spent a year down there with him and traveled with him. So I vaguely recall that, but I very clearly recall being told by my parents as well as my grandparents about not going in places. For an example, my mother would put me and my two younger brothers on a Greyhound bus in the summer, at the beginning of summer, several years in a row, send us down to her parents, my grandparents, to spend the summer and keep us out of trouble in the big city while my mother worked during the summer. And we learned, especially, let's see, one of the biggest stops was Louisville, Kentucky. And back then they still had the colored rooms and the whites only bathrooms and the whites only this and that and the water fountain. And we were told in no uncertain terms, do not go in the white waiting room. And my mother was trying to be nice about it. My grandfather was very serious. He said, boy, you go in there, we might not never see you again. And, I knew about lynchings and things like that. So, even though my middle brother was always curious, wanting to go in there, I would hold him back and say, no, Joe, we ain't going up in there. Because I ain't going to be trying to find you, you know. But the Green Book, it was vital at that time. And I think about it, because it wasn't just regular people who used them. Athletes and entertainers and salespeople, they definitely used it for work purposes. And it started in 1936, but eventually expanded through all of North America, or much of North America, including most of the United States and parts of Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Bermuda. Ain't that deep? Now, also, Mr. Green started a travel, what do you call it, a travel agency. That was smart too. But let me share with you the introduction, because the introduction, I think, is very important history wise. Okay, just read some of it to you. With the introduction of this travel guide in 1936, it has been our idea to give the Negro traveler information that will keep him from running into difficulties, embarrassments, and to make his trips more enjoyable. The Jewish press has long published information about places that are restricted, and there are numerous publications that give the Gentile whites all kinds of information. But during these long years of discrimination, before 1936, other guides have been published for the Negro. Some are still published, but the majority have gone out of business for various reasons. In 1936, the Green Book was only a local publication for metropolitan New York. The response for copies was so great, it was turned into a national issue in 1937 to cover the United States. This guide, while lacking in many respects, was accepted by thousands of travelers. Through the courtesy of the United States Travel Bureau, of which Mr. Charles A.R. McDowell was the collaborator on Negro affairs, more valuable information was secured. With the two working together, this guide contained the best ideas for the Negro traveler. Year after year it grew until 1941, PM, one of New York's great white newspapers, found out about it, wrote an article about the guide, and praised it highly. At the present time, the guide contains 80 pages and lists numerous business places, including whites, which cater to the Negro trade. Wow. Um, oh, this I love. There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published. This is when we as a race will have equal opportunities and privileges in the United States. It will be a great day for us to suspend this publication, for then we can go wherever we please and without embarrassment. But until that time comes, we shall continue to publish this information for your convenience every year, each year. Is that deep? Um, the sad thing is that now it ceased publication officially, I think, in 1966 or 67. But in the last few years, particularly since actually started as part of the backlash with President Obama, we saw a movement backwards in this country. And so I think it was NAACP in some state, might have been Missouri, they put out official thing, letter saying, y'all got to be careful going through Missouri. And it alluded to the Green Book that it was dangerous. And so, again, another example of taking the country backwards. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And because they never really stopped either, they didn't stop teaching their children hatred. And they made sure their children knew history, a different history than what we would learn in school. So, uh, in a way, it is a need for a new Green Book. Uh, and I don't know if some of the people, if some of you reading this or watching this or listening to this, if you knew about it, but it is amazing because it shows our ingenuity. I can read what you saw in the video about going on journeys where you had to take your own food and blankets and stuff, sleeping in the car, and even about the tin cans, just in case you couldn't find a bathroom. Although most of us learn how to go behind the bushes. You know, we would pull up, and somebody had to go to the bathroom. Now, this was only for if you had to urinate. If you had to defecate, you had to hold that, baby. I cannot recall ever defecating on the side of the road. I didn't do it. I just recall holding it until we finally got where we were going. And there would be a rush to go to the bathroom one after the other. And this is back in the day when there was only one bathroom in the house, you know. Um, wow. In a way, it's such unpleasant. It's funny. In a way, I recall things from when I was a child growing up that dealt with prejudice and um, and discrimination. But but I don't recall a lot of unpleasantness. I can recall times when there was a certain amount of fear. Um, we'll go. like through it seemed like long distances where there wasn't no street lights. Okay, it was out in the country, wasn't no lights but the headlights. And now I used to my assignment when we went traveling with my mom. My assignment was to sit up front and talk to my mom to keep her awake. And we used to have long discussions, great discussions. And then at times we would listen to the radio. Of course, in certain areas, the only thing you could get was a country western station. So we'd be listening to country western radio and singing. I learned to sing country western songs because we'd be singing along, me and my mom. And it was just, it was good things, but it was also some negative things. You know, I never really knew back then how dangerous things really were. But I'm just glad that the Green Book existed. One of the things that I learned just recently that really blew my mind, most gas stations, especially in the South, they didn't serve black people. That's why you even had to carry some spare gasoline. But and Shell was notorious for not serving black people. But I just now learned that Esso was one of the few national brands that did serve black people. And I can recall that very vividly going into Esso stations and being glad to see an Esso station. But I didn't realize then that was Standard Oil. SO, SO, Standard Oil. And that came about because within Esso, the corporate, there was a brother named James Billboard Jackson. He was a sales rep for Esso, and they had a marketing division called the Race Group, and they promoted the Green Book as enabling Esso's black customers to go further with less anxiety. Um, they actually would have the Green Book on sale at Esso stations. And one of their slogans, happy motoring. And I can recall that, but back then it didn't even hit me. It didn't hit me, Esso, but I remember those Esso gas stations very well. So it's just another one of those things that, we sort of did know and didn't know, and things that were going on in our lives. Here's the close.
And as the road cut through the broad plains, you felt the tremendous space all around you, the country rolling out to the horizon, and you rolling with it. It was beautiful, and you sort of sensed the real meaning behind the word freedom.
Now, the movie, The Green Book, or it's just called Green Book. And like I say, I'm going to have some information here that some may consider spoilers. But I was so pissed when I learned about how something that was real, first of all, the true story about Dr. Don Shirley and the true story about the Green Book. Both of those things really did exist. Dr. Shirley did exist, so did the Green Book. And these two white guys made a movie and exploited both of them. Let me explain a little bit. Some people have described the Green Book, the movie, as kind of a reverse Driving Miss Daisy. White guy named Viggo Mortensen stars as Tony Lip. He's an Italian-American bouncer, and he's hired to drive a classical pianist, Dr. Don Shirley, on a concert tour from Manhattan down to the Deep South. Okay? I say, okay, that's cool. The brother that plays Dr. Don Shirley is Mahashala Ali. Now, one of the things that happened, and I was a little bit perturbed because he Dr. Shirley is described in some of the reviews by white people, and many of the white people love this movie, right? The reviewers. But what happened was that um, they described Dr. Shirley as he's played in this movie as a Jamaican American queer classical pianist. And I was struck by the use of the word queer. Now, when I did my research on Dr. Don Shirley, I ran across nothing that described him as gay, nothing that described, and definitely nothing that described him as queer. So I was interested in why was this term used to describe the character in the movie, queer. See, because in the language of the LGBTQ community, queer is a step further than gay. Okay? So I still don't have a definitive answer to that, but it is part of what I'm talking about how Hollywood has taken a real live person and decided to put their spin on it. Now, here's the deal. The movie is told from the white guy's perspective. And that's, I guess, because for one thing, the script or the story is taken from the true story, but as written by the Tony Lip's son. Tony Lip's son got together with he had the script and he got together with the white director, and they decided to do this movie from the white guy's perspective, or his father's perspective. And his father was a racist. And I'm not making it up. That's how they cast him in the movie. For an example, Tony Lip, he says words like eggplant quite a bit. Instead of using the quote N word, he calls black people eggplants. And two black service workers enter his home and they drink beverages from glasses that Tony Lip's wife offered them. And as soon as they get through, he takes their empty glasses out of the sink and throws them in the garbage so that no one in his home will have to use the same glass black people use once. And you know, it's funny about this in this sense, because that's, they're notorious for that. But check this out. It actually relates to something totally different. Michael Jordan has a huge house up in suburban Chicago, something like 5,600 square feet or square, whatever. Huge mansion. Got a full basketball court and all kind of stuff, right? Well, he put this house on the market. God, it's got to be 10 years ago now. When he first put it on the market, I said publicly, Michael Jordan will not sell this house. He will not be able to sell this house. And to this day, he has not been able to sell this house. And I said the reason why is this. White people will not buy a house that a black person lived in. I don't care if it's Michael Jordan or not. And there's very few black people who can afford the house, or it's a whole estate. And I said it like this. I said they will wait until it gets down low enough that then some white people will buy it, tear it down, and build a whole nother house. Now y'all watch and see if I'm not telling you the truth. This house is still up, and he keeps lowering the price, lowering the price, lowering the price. And that's when it'll get sold, is when the price gets low enough that somebody buys it, tears it down, and then puts it up. Because that's how they are. So this guy in the movie, Tony Lip, doing that didn't surprise me. Now, in the movie, Dr. Shirley and Tony Lip become very good friends, lifelong friends. And so some people see that as this idea that, even a racist can be reformed, but they don't understand. A racist relationship with individual black people is not the same as being anti-racist. He does not become anti-racist. Couple of things here. One is the character, Dr. Shirley, doesn't come into the movie until 20 minutes into the movie. Now, here's the thing. In the movie, as well as in real life, Dr. Shirley lived in just a gorgeous apartment above Carnegie Hall. Did you hear me? He lived above Carnegie Hall. In the movie, he dresses like a king, and he got all kinds of statues and trinkets from around the world, gifts, he says, from his friends, and he's sitting literally on a throne in the movie. And I'm going to tell you more about the real life Dr. Shirley in just a couple of minutes. But anyway, Tony Lip decides to take the job, and it's an 8-week, $125 a week, which is good money back in those days. But Tony Lip makes it clear he's not going to be the black man butler. He told Dr. Shirley, you're going to handle your own bags. Okay? So he says, okay. But all throughout the movie, see, because it's done from the white man's perspective, there's little stuff. Tony Lip lectures Dr. Shirley about black culture. He supposedly, Dr. Shirley supposedly didn't know who Little Richard is, and Tony Lip does, and supposedly for not eating fried chicken. Okay? And he jokes and stuff about how he's blacker than Dr. Shirley, and even jokes about it before he goes to sleep comfortably in his whites-only hotel. Now, here's what got me the most about the movie, The Green Book. The Green Book comes into the movie when a white representative from Dr. Shirley's record company pulls Tony Lip aside and gives him a copy of the book and explains that Tony Lip will need it to know where he can safely take Dr. Shirley on his trip down south. So he does. Dr. Shirley never deals with the Green Book. The white boy does, and he got it from another white man. So I said, what kind of crap is this? And then, from what I understand, if it's used or shown again, it's again the white boy using it. So in the movie, and you can see this in some of this stuff is in the trailer. Like this graphic here on the poster. Look who's up front. The white boy's up front. The black man is in the background, even though it's supposed to be about him. but it's not really about him. It's about the white boy and how he's so, it's Hollywood. Hollywood demands that you must have a white savior. Okay? And so, even though, as you'll find out in a minute, Dr. Don Shirley was a internationally known concert pianist, the movie could not be made unless the white boy was the savior. Now, there's some other things about the way the characters played and stuff that I had issues with. In fact, his family even talks about it, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this whole idea of how he tries to culture up the white boy. He tells him about his language. He even writes letters for him or dictates, because the white boy promised to write his wife a letter. And so he's shown trying to scribble out a letter. And of course, Dr. Shirley looks at it and says, that'll never do. And he dictates him a letter. And of course, it's very, very articulate, because the way Ali plays Dr. Shirley, and I don't know because I never got to hear Dr. Shirley talk, but he plays him in this very rich and articulate way. And in the movie, he's played very distant from black people. That he doesn't socialize with black people or any of this. Tony Lip socialized more with black people than the Dr. Shirley character does in the movie. Again, fiction, fiction, fiction. So, I'm always curious whenever I see a movie that's supposed to be about somebody black, but white people love the movie. So when I saw all the critics saying, "Oh, this is a great movie. Oh, yeah, love this movie," my antenna went up and I said, "Oh, shoot." And sure enough, it's a white savior movie. And in the end, they get through the tour and they become lifelong friends. And by then, the Green Book is totally forgotten. So that's the deal on the movie, The Green Book. Now, I want to share with you a little bit about the real Dr. Donald Shirley. And like I say, I do not know if Dr. Shirley was gay. I don't know if he was queer. I just know, and it's okay if he was, but I just don't like the idea that they stuck a word on him. In fact, back then, I don't think queer was used in that way. So I think it was a subtle kind of thing to throw at the brother to make it okay that the character's being played so aloof. Dr. Shirley was actually born in Pensacola, Florida. His parents were Jamaican. Now, Dr. Shirley learned to play piano when he was 2 years old. At the age of 9, he was invited to study theory at the Leningrad Conservatory of Music. Leningrad, yes, that's in Russia. He also studied at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Now, Dr. Shirley spent his life working to be a concert pianist of classical music. It was his passion and also what he trained for from a very young age. Now, his mother was a teacher who died when he was just 9 years old. But he quickly showed his talents as a piano prodigy. He had mastered all the standard music for classical piano by age 10, By age 18, he was debuted with the Boston Pops, playing Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto in B flat. He went on, like I say, to college, Catholic University, and studied music. Um, a year later, one of his compositions he performed with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. You notice that one of his compositions, he was writing classical music, composing. He received the invitation from the Haitian government in 1949 to play at the Exposition International at Port-au-Prince, followed by a repeat performance the next week. But now here's where it gets interesting. He abandoned the piano as a career when he was young, meaning that when he got into his 20s. In Chicago, as a psychologist, he returned to music. So he left the piano, left his music career, and went to school to become a psychologist. He was given a grant to study the relationship between music and juvenile crime, which had broken out in the early 1950s. Playing in a small club, he experimented with sound to determine how the audience responded. The audience was unaware of his experiments and that he had planted students to gauge their reactions. Now, in the 50s and 60s, he did go back to music. In fact, he did many albums. Okay, uh, it's amazing. He worked with the Chicago Symphony, uh, Detroit Symphony, the National Symphony Orchestra. He wrote symphonies for the New York Philharmonic and the Philadelphia Orchestra. Oh man, he did so much. He wrote organ symphonies, piano concerti, cello concerto, three-string quartets, one-act opera, works for organ, piano, and violin. He received a doctorate of music psychology and liturgical arts. He spoke 8 languages fluently, and he was a talented painter. He died of heart disease in 2013 at the age of 86. Now, he really did go on the tour of the South. And he really did hire this Italian guy, Tony Lip, to drive him. And they did become friends. But according to his brother and his other family members, they said that movie is full of lies. They said he wasn't isolated from black people. They said he knew how to eat chicken, fried chicken. They said that was ludicrous. Said all that stuff about how Tony Lip supposedly taught him how to be black and all that stuff. He said that's ludicrous. And interestingly enough, when they went to make the movie, they didn't go to his family at all. They took it all from the white boy's son who wrote the script. And so they didn't even consider the family of the man it was about to be worthy of their input or asking their permission. So, yeah, this is a statement from his niece, Carol Shirley Kimball. She said, "My name is Carol Shirley Kimball. I'm the niece of Don Shirley, supposedly the subject of the movie The Green Book. There was no due diligence done to afford my family and my deceased uncle the respect of properly representing him his legacy, his worth, and the excellence in which he operated and the excellence in which he lived. It's once again a depiction of a white man's version of a black man's life. My uncle was an incredibly proud man and an incredibly accomplished man, as are the majority of people in my family. And to depict him as less than, and to depict him and take away from him, and make the story about a hero of a white man for this incredibly accomplished black man is insulting at best. And I have to thoroughly, thoroughly agree. I think you can understand why I was pissed. And I keep saying that because I was pissed, and I'm not ashamed of being pissed when I first saw about this movie. And like I say, some of us have been knowing about the Green Book for a long time. And so it was an insult to me to take the Green Book and its legacy and its history and take the name and throw it on a movie that had nothing to do with the Green Book, and then to take the man's life and just slander it. Slander it. So that's why I did this class today, especially for this reason, so that there would be a record that we didn't just sit here and say, oh, well. No, I want it to be a record that shows the true story of Dr. Shirley. Okay? And I'm going to close now because that's basically what I wanted to do. Thank you, Clyde, of course, for being here, and all the others. And for everybody who gets to see this in the future, I hope that it gives you some idea of why some of us go off about how Hollywood, it doesn't change. It keeps doing the same thing over and over again. It slanders us, it puts us down, it lies about us, it takes our lives and distorts them. It takes our accomplishments and puts them under someone of far less accomplishment. I won't say worth, but far less accomplishment. How are you going to take this Italian bouncer and make him be more important to a story involving Dr. Shirley? Shame and a disgrace. Anyway, I close with, of course, my favorite, which is no justice, no peace, no love, KNOW.